Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled to be able to offer another community conversation and author evening. This is part of a series of programs we offer as part of our commitment to education in the community. And many of you know, but Mission Hospice has been serving San Mateo and Santa Clara counties for over 40 years as a nonprofit independent hospice, and just thrilled to be able to offer from education through hospice and bereavement care to families in our community. And tonight I am personally thrilled to introduce Libby Boatwright. I had the pleasure, immense pleasure, of meeting Libby professionally when we were having meetings at Stanford about patient care and integrating spiritual care and our work in the community with hospitals. So it's exciting for me because at that time we were talking about the work you were doing and the programs you were delivering, and at that time it wasn't a book yet. And so Libby is now not only an esteemed relief chaplain in oncology, outpatient palliative care medicine at Stanford Healthcare. She has over 25 years in ministry experience serving diverse cultures, along with extensive work in the arts and financial planning. And this was one of the things that I found the most unique about this woman. You get to hear her wisdom in just a few minutes, is knowing from the side of financial planning to speak with families about really what matters in conversations and planning ahead, through to becoming a minister, working with congregations in the community, and then as a chaplain and a spiritual leader in one of the largest healthcare systems in our area. It's a profound and unique combination. And Libby, this book and your gift to the people this night, tonight, of sharing your wisdom is second to none in crossing over those areas. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
And thank you. My goodness, what a blessing it is. I can't tell you. I have admired hospice, Mission Hospice, for so many years. My dad was part of it before he died. And so I have a personal thanks to everyone in the organization, in addition to just knowing the great work you do. And so excited to be part of the educational side of the hospice. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. And just to kind of kick us off, because we're going to cover a lot of territory tonight, and there's a lot of information in the book, I want to just tell us something about your inspiration for writing it. How did this come about?
Well, I think it's a personal story, really, because my parents both died within a year of each other. And so that was quite a trauma for our family, and the chaos that ensued in terms of trying to find files and all the other things that were involved and trying to, put together the estate, and managing that was quite a feat. Not too many years after that, my sister-in-law died. And so that was also a difficult time for us. So as a family, I just saw so many ways to avoid the kind of things that we had to go through. And I'd also done about 10 and a half years, close to 350 funerals at a church that I served in. So I was working with so many families that were going through this time of real crisis and upheaval and so on. And I thought, why not put something together for people? Let's make this my motivation, my inspiration to help others so they don't go through the same thing that we did. And so that's really where the book was born. I started with a class called The Last Things We Talk About, taught that to about 800 people. And through that series, then started to think about writing the book. And then just back in 2018, after I retired full-time, I started writing. So book was done in 2019, 2020, but all the edits and everything else take time. So we actually launched in April of this year. So anyway, it's a work of love, and it's hopefully going to be helping a lot of people. That's my prayer.
It can't not. And coming from personal experience has, rather than a theoretical experience, I mean, there are a lot of books, there's a lot of websites, there's a lot of information about how to on certain things, but when you've lived it, and then that's your inspiration for writing it, you can really hold people's hands in a different way. You start the book with meaning and purpose principles, and also these concentric circles. Can you explain? And for those of you on this call and meeting tonight, the link to Libby's book and some of the materials of it will be shared as part of this as well. But what are the concentric circles, and how does that impact people's care?
Well, concentric circles have to do with our support system, your support pod, as I would call it. And it starts with you at the center. You're the one that's living in your body. You know what's going on. You have some idea of how things are going or not going so well. And so then the second concentric circle are your, what I call BFFs, your 2 o'clock friends, the people that you can call at 2 in the morning and they won't mind, and vice versa. Close friends, people that are confidants, people that are what I call the being parts of the concentric circles, because the third concentric circle are the doers. They're the people that you can call on for errands, kindnesses, taking care of the dog, taking care of the house, bringing meals, all the things that have to do with tasks and task orientation. And so they're wonderful people, and you really count on them, and they're really part of your tighter part of the circles. On the fourth concentric circle, it's really your professionals, the doctors and people that you pay, the appointments that you make, the people that you count on, kind of one-offs, things that are not necessarily consistent but important. So they still form that concentric circle around the other three. And then you finally get, with that might be also all your extended relatives, the folks that don't live very close but are concerned, want to know, can maybe help once in a while or visit. The fifth circle is everybody else, except those you don't want to be part of your circle, which may include, your former spouses or other people, the wayward children that are not so close anymore. And that fifth circle is just everybody else. Might be neighbors, might be people that would just be a help, maybe once in a while, just as kind of a passing thing. But the idea is from the center, you work out to the people from the very closest, the ones that really are your beers, the ones that will sit by you and work with you, to then the doers, to then everybody kind of in the professional life, and then everybody else. And so I use that as because you may in your lifetime or in your chronic illness find that you're going to need to call on these people. And do you have delegated, tasks and things you want them to do? Your BFFs, they're just going to be there as your Snoopy dog, the ones that are going to listen no matter what. The fourth circle are going to be the people that you count on for specific professional needs. And that third circle are going to be your, the ones that bring the casserole, the ones that take care of the dog, the ones that do all the consistent, helpful things. So, delegate. Most importantly, you need to delegate, because when you're ill, you don't have that energy. So you think ahead in advance and find ways to delegate the kinds of things you need.
Yeah, brilliant way to visualize that. And also as a recent, I call it unanticipated caregiver, which every caregiver, I think, is an unanticipated caregiver. It just happens. And then you need to be in that position for however short or long time. That's when you realize you should have had this kind of in place beforehand, that you all of a sudden need to call on people, or you find out who those people are. So I love that imagery and clarity of those circles.
And may I say too, Mary, a lot of people say, I just want to help you, just tell me what to do. But if we don't give them specifics, it won't get done. So I suggest that the person, you, make a list of the things you need. And then when people call, you can give them specific things to do. The worst thing to do is say, yeah, I'll call you. And they never get called. And then they think they don't have anything to give you, when really their desire is to do something wonderful. And so if you give them something specific, you've honored them as well.
Yeah, I will add to that just slightly that we actually had some friends, and it was a short term, but we had some friends that were actually felt left out because I didn't call them back for a specific thing. And the whole intention, as mine would be if they were in that situation. So really, really important point. And I see some other heads nodding. So given that, how important is it for people to just discern what matters most to them, and how do you help or suggest that people go about doing that?
Well, I like to have kind of the conversation with myself and say, if anything should happen to me, what are the things that I want to get done? Is there a bucket list, or are there things that really matter to you? When we sit down with the goals of care conversation with our patients, and we'll get to that in a few minutes, We ask what inspires you. What are the things that matter? What wakes you up in the morning? How is it you get through the days when you've had 5 days of chemo and radiation and you can't move? What are the things that matter to you? And are there things that you need to get done? For instance, a perfect example for me was a gentleman that came in. He had stage 4 cancer, was not looking good in terms of his diagnosis or prognosis. And we said, well, what are the things you really want to do? He said, I want to go see my son in Mendocino, get married, and I want to go to Paris. And I thought, okay, big order. But he made it to Mendocino. And the reason he made it Mendocino, because he told us what mattered to him. And we were able to rearrange his radiation and chemotherapy schedule so that he would have some time off before the wedding and after the wedding, and he would have the energy to enjoy it. That's what I mean about, finding out what matters most. So it's sometimes scheduling, sometimes it's, milestones and things you don't want to miss. But most importantly, it's what inspires you. The things, it might be your faith, it might be nature, it might be your animals, it might be your kids, grandkids, who knows what it is. But you want to make that a priority, because on the bad days, those are the things you need. Those are the things you need to be reminded of.
And both the things you need to be reminded of, but to the example you just gave, so many people don't understand that that's what spiritual care, palliative care, hospice care can actually rearrange to the best of our ability, medications or treatment plans, or to help people achieve what matters most to them. So it's not just a nice thing to know, we can really do things to help if it's possible. So
it's kind of like dreaming big. It's saying, if you could do anything you wanted, if you had all the money in the world, which is kind of a hard one because a lot of people get very broke with medical expenses. But let's just say if they had their wish, what would it be? And why can't we get there? What's stopping us? The fellow didn't make it to Paris, God bless him. But we got him to Mendocino, and he really felt that he fulfilled something that was very important, and he died a very, very thankful man. So that's kind of the things that matter most. And it could be people, it could be things, it could be dogs, animals, nature, whatever it is. Get that as a priority. Decide that that's important.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Now, you mentioned at the beginning, this kind of the inspiration was your personal experience, as well as the professional. Unless you have the most perfect family in the world, there are family dynamics. In all of these situations. And I love that the fifth circle was the people you don't want involved. So taking kind of the global conversation about family dynamics, how do you start the conversation? How do you keep people in the fold? What are your tips for family dynamics?
Well, I think first of all, you know who you're speaking to. If it's a builder, someone that was born before, the world wars and lived through the Great Depression and has really, just worked through so many different decades of issues, they're not ones that like to talk very much. I mean, if you know a person, a World War II veteran, they don't talk about the war. They don't get to those subjects that are hard. So typically you kind of have to go through the back door with someone of that age. You have to say, Mom, Dad, I don't know if you know about this, but we've done our wills and we've done our advanced directives. I want you to see a copy of it and see what you think, because it might be something you'd want to do too. You model it. You let them know that it's comfortable, that it's okay, that it's part of the family plan. That would be where I'd go with the builder, rather than, okay, Dad, you got to fill this out, because if you don't, I'm not going to take care of you, kind of thing. That's not going to go. So the other thing you might consider is kind of conversations. There's a thing called the Conversation Project, which is, they now have 6 different modules in terms of how to talk to your family, specific questions on end of life and preferences. It's a wonderful piece. There's a little card game called Go Wish that's kind of interesting. It's questions that you can kind of work around different issues and topics. Just so many different ways to start the conversation, but most importantly, know who you're speaking to, and don't assume that they're going to buy in. It's going to be a tough conversation, because most people, it's like death and taxes. They don't want to go there. And so you have to say, maybe model for yourself, I've been thinking about this and I want to take care of you, Mom. But I don't know what the kind of things you want to have done. When you get to that point where you're not speaking for yourself, can we make sure that I'm the person that will speak for you? And what are the kinds of things you want? Well, I don't want to be cremated. Okay, great, Mom. Thanks for letting me know, and you start there. Let them kind of lash out, but then you might find yourself getting into the deeper and kinder and gentler conversations that they need to do. And I wouldn't do it all at once. I do it in small doses. Again, it's like eating the elephant, one bite at a time, maybe just a couple of questions a week when you go see them, and model again what you're doing so that it doesn't feel like they're being forced. The worst thing you can do is let people think they're being forced. They will not buy into it. Just awful. So anyway, that's where I'd start the conversation. If you have those other opportunities like the Conversation Project, or there's a new one that BJ Paracoy has just put out, What Matters Most. She's got a questionnaire. She's from Stanford, and that is also on the web. Many, many different options there, but be gentle, be kind, go slow. Don't try to do it all at once, and see if they start to initiate things. And if they do, then you jump into that conversation because they're clearly softening up for that inevitable thing that they have to decide on. And, you can tell them you do it because you love them. Hey, Mom, I just want to do the right thing for you. I love you so much that in order to do the things you really care about, I just need to know what that is. And if this isn't a good time, let's do it next Thursday, or plan a time we can sit down and do that. So let's see. Some of the family systems, you often have people that do not want to talk about anything that has to do with death or dying or illness. Mm-hmm. And you may find yourself looking to the point person. There's often in family, you have the head of state, as I call it, and they're the person that's going to be doing all the talking with the doctors and then come back and be the mediator with you. And if that's what's going to go on, then find that point person, and maybe that's the one, the designated first son that Mom will talk to. Okay, designated first son goes and talks to Mom, then designated first son comes back to the rest of the family, gets the news out. That may be a family dynamic. There's also the family that won't talk to Mom at all about her illness. And so, again, it goes through the designated person. They'll let you know if they're going to say anything, and they will also tell the doctor that they will not tell the patient anything. So the patient's in the dark, and the family's got all the knowledge, so it's kind of a power struggle. Then there's the family that wants to know everything, and there's 20 in the room. And they're all working at it because it's by committee. And so that may be another thing that you are working with. We're going to have a family meeting and Mom's coming and she wants to tell us what's going on. Great. Whatever way it's comfortable for that person, that's what you need to go with.
And those dynamics don't just show up around end of life, do they? They're often entrenched in the family dynamics, and that's what you're working with at the time of a difficult.
Well, you'll also find it around a death of somebody else in the family. All of a sudden, the reality sets in. They see mortality coming their way. It might be a brother or sister who just passed away, and now all of a sudden they're motivated. Fine, let's do it. Let's get that done. I'm so glad that you've finally found the time, because I do want to do the right thing for you. All about doing the I message for the person. Let them know that you care. And I think with that also, tell their story. One of the ways I found that people will get into this conversation is letting them tell their story. And if you haven't done this, I know Charlie, you're on here. He did StoryCorps. And there's also Storyworth. There's a lot of different programs that are wonderful. And once they start telling their story, then they say, I really might be going. So, if I don't get the story out, it's going to die with me. Right, Mom? So let's get the video going. Let's get the tape going. Let's do Storyworth or StoryCorps, whatever. And let's get your story written. And once you've done that, then we know how to honor you. What a super thing to know your story. So
beautiful. So coming into the conversations, and I know you've listed a couple of resources. Vanessa, thank you for putting them in the chat.
Thank you, yes.
I will also flag, and we'll put in the summary of this event. There's a video, and Mission Hospice has, we actually use the Go Wish and the Conversation Project and Stanford's program in our advanced care planning programming. So there will be links to that in your resources as well. given that, what are some of the things you have to cover in the talk? What are things that, if you need to really know the down and dirty as well, you need to know what matters most.
Yeah.
And then you need to know some of the practical things. What's your list?
I think the most thing are, what are your wishes and your hopes? You know, when people come to end of life, they have this picture of angels singing around their bed and everyone, you know, singing hymns and spiritual songs and, you know, whatever it is. If that's what you want, let us know, okay? Because some people want to die alone and others want to have a big party. It's what I call the last sprint. I have many stories about that. But, you know, are there ways, you know, how do you want to go out? There's the question. There may be your wishes, your hopes. It may be, you know, I want to have people around me. I want to be loved and I want tributes. I want people singing to me. You know, and then there may be some concerns. I have some things you don't know, and I want to tell you about those things because it's not going to show up in any, you know, tab or in any ledger or anything of that sort that you need to know. So it's important that I tell you these things now. I mean, Ira Byrok does a beautiful, the 4 things that matter most. Mm-hmm. You know, I love you, please forgive me, I forgive you, and goodbye. You know, wow. And if you get those 4 things covered, that's a good start in terms of that final time. Also, it may be that it's important that you let them know about cultural things. In other words, how you want to be buried. I mean, one of the things I cover extensively in the book is the different kinds of cultural differences in terms of the 6 major religions and what that means, and the washing and the wrapping and, you know, the kinds of prayers that are done and the duos and the things that really matter to that person culturally. You may want to express that and say, I want to be dressed in my wedding gown, or I want to be dressed in my vacation outfit or whatever, and have my stuffed animal with me, and then you can cremate me. I mean, you know, those are kinds of things that get discussed. But I would also say, how is it you want to spend your last days? Do you want to be at home? Do you want to be in the hospital? And more importantly, before we get there, where do you want to live? Here's the real tough part. A lot of people in the older generations lived in 4 generations houses. Okay, you know, mom and dad were on the bottom floor, the kids were on the second floor. Dad, grandma and grandpa maybe lived on the 3rd floor. If they were feeling older, they got the 1st floor, and mom and dad got the other floor. And everybody lived together, and it was all very happy. It was Beaver Cleaver neighborhood, and nobody had any problems, and everybody got together. That's not happening anymore. And yet they still have this dream that they're going to live together because you, daughter or sister or mother or whoever, are going to take care of me. And that's the way it worked in my family, so why can't we do that? That's an expectation that needs to be handled. And so if a person decides on a different living situation, is everybody on the same page as to where their roles are? In fact, you know, you talked about that tonight, Mary, about the unexpected caregiver. A lot of us are going to be unexpected caregiver. It's one of the largest single professions right now without being paid in the country. And a lot of people are finding themselves having to leave jobs or do things part-time because mom doesn't either have the finances or dad doesn't have the money. And their expectation is that you're going to take care of them. And in 1930 and 40 and 50, that was absolutely true because there wasn't the need for a second income. But now there is. And so that expectation has to be dealt with. So it's important that you talk about living situations. Is it going to be assisted living? The new big thing right now in California, for those of you that are here, is the ADU. You build a little place in the back, your cottage. Grandma or grandpa lives there until they die, and then you rent it out as an apartment. I mean, it's the hot thing right now, and everybody's going into that because they know there's an aging population, and they don't want them going to the assisted livings and dealing with all the COVID issues. They want them close by so they can supervise them. And the parents are happy as clams because they're by their kids and everybody's getting along. But not everybody can do an ADU. So what is it you see yourself doing? That's a really important conversation. Are you going to age in place in your home? What's it going to take in terms of extra care? And what are your expectations of the family? Because you can't assume that we're going to be over every Friday. So it's a good conversation to have. And I think a lot of people forget that. The other thing, of course, are the advance directives. Charlie will nod at this point. The most important thing about the work that we do, one of the most important things is an advance directive, because it is what I call the permission slip of the hospital. It's saying to your loved ones, These are the things I want for me at end of life, and I'm appointing these people to do it. And the reason I'm appointing these people are they know me and they know a hospital. They know how to work around the floor. There are some people that have family members that can't do either of those things because they don't know you and they don't know hospitals. So you want to have people in that form that really know you and your wishes and can talk to doctors and know what the score is. You get those two people, you've got your A team. And then your wishes are met because it's in the chart and the doctor will follow what you said. That's by law. And it's a legal document. It doesn't cost you anything if you do it at the hospital. And, it's in your permanent chart. So what a gift to get that done. The other thing that people often talk to about with their family is a POLST form. And it means physician ordered life-sustaining treatment. It is a pink form. You can't miss it, often on the walls of many people's homes or on the refrigerator. But it's for the EMTs and the emergency people that come into your home and don't know how you want to be treated. And so if you've done that form of an advance directive and it's on your refrigerator or someplace nearby, the EMT knows exactly what you want to have done. You saved them the guessing game of maybe doing treatment that you don't want. So those two forms are really important. And I think discussing those with your family, especially if you've assigned someone on the AD that's part of your family, they need a copy.
Great, thank you. And I know we get asked all the time in our advanced directive workshops and about the conversation, what if you don't have those people, Libby? I mean, on the hospital side, what if you don't know or have somebody that knows how to talk to the medical system, or you really feel, and in the stage of your life, there isn't someone around you? What can you tell people from your experience in the hospital?
I think then if there isn't someone in your life that you can appoint as an agent, you need to be the agent then and make sure that your wishes are known well in advance. So that would be a goals of care conversation. And I would say, and that's coming up, that's our next topic. So we might as well get to it.
There we go.
Okay. So if it is a goals of care conversation, you and your doctor are having the dialogue of your life. That's the best way to say it. Because you said, and I think we have, if I remember, we have a handout for that. So Vanessa, if you want to throw that up.
This is the heavy choreography moment.
Heavy choreography, everybody hang in there. Da 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 da. There we go. All right. Music is playing. There it is. So we've got what matters most to me, and that's part of your handouts as well. So that was kind of the inspiration piece. And then we'll go on to the next one, which are my goals of care. And I would just say that this is probably one of the most important decisions you'll make, because if you have an agent, you may want to bring them along with you. If you don't, and you're the only person that's making this decision, these are the kinds of questions you need to know. So what's my current understanding of where I am with my illness? And what has the doctor communicated with me so far? Sometimes you just get, well, you've got cancer. That's it. I mean, crazy. You've got to know what kind, specifics. What's the treatment plan, so on and so forth. And then how much more information about my current condition and future prognosis would I like to have? What do I want to know? That's really important, because sometimes you feel like you're in the dark. And this is your conversation where you get all those questions answered. And you tell the doctor, no, you don't have the next appointment. You have me. You will stay with me until this is done. So these are some of the longest conversations we have in palliative care, but they're the most important. So get your questions answered. And what are my biggest fears and worries? Are you scared that I won't be there for my kids, or that I have somebody to care for and they won't have anybody to care for them? Am I going to lose control of my job, my whatever? And they can tell you where you are in the diagnosis or in the prognosis of your situation and what it's going to look like in the next few months. So if you have to go on disability or not, or if you have to take a part-time job instead of the full-time job, you want to let them know what your fears are. And then what gives me strength as I think about the future and my health concerns or illness? Is it my family, my friends? This is kind of what matters most, but in a different dress. Specific activities like travel or reading or writing or gardening or so on. These are important because the doctor, if they know this and they know something's coming up like a garden club festival or whatever, and like the Mendocino wedding, they can plan their time around your therapies. And which abilities are so critical to my life that I can't imagine living without them? Is it being able to communicate? Is walking, driving, living at home alone? Is it taking care of activities of daily living? We'll talk a little bit about that later, the ADLs. Feeding and toiling, dressing yourself, all of those things come into play when we go into the continuum of care and where you're going to be placed. And if my health situation worsens, what's the most important to me? What are the things that I find are the things that I want to make sure get done, bucket list, and so on. And if I become sicker, how much am I willing to go through the possibility of gaining more time? We get this all the time. If I just do 6 more months of chemo, does that mean I get 3 years? Or is that just not, is the the balance of that not worth it? Tell me what it means. And then how much does my healthcare proxy, durable power of attorney, or family know about my wishes or priorities? This is so important. If they're on your AD, this is a good meeting for them to come to, because they're going to find out exactly what the doctor's telling you, which is then your plan of care in terms of how you can tell your agent or the other people that are on your durable power of attorney. So it's a really, really important thing. So if you don't have someone on your durable power of attorney for healthcare, the AD, Advanced Directive, then this is your chance to get everything in the chart that you want done. Because this is the kind of thing that has a separate part in the EPIC where we work. Our EPIC chart has a separate section, which is just goals of care. So then the doctor can go into it and say, well, this is what she said to me on this stage. She said she wanted this and she didn't want this. She said this was important and this was not important. So again, this would be a very, very critical part of your care. Thank you, Vanessa, for putting that up. Appreciate it. Okay.
And thank you, Libby, for also translating how, there's a lot of information, and I hope people on this call know more about advanced directives than certainly we used to 15, 20 years ago. And yet the translation of what happens in the healthcare system, that's actually what you're looking at on the patient's chart. It's really important.
And I think it's important too, Mary, we haven't gotten into this much because we haven't talked about continuum of care, but palliative care is one of those kind of myths that people still think is end of life. It's not. You can have palliative care from the beginning of your diagnosis with your primary care physician. You can have it any time during your continuum of care. And what it is to work on symptomatic issues. So many doctors, even doctors, believe it or not, God bless them, they still think of this as end of life. It's not. What it is to work with symptomatic issues. So if you have, constipation, or you have nausea, or you have things where, there's concern about, emotional stability or anything of those sorts, that can be addressed much earlier on than when we get close to something like hospice, which is a little closer to the end of life, normally legally around 6 months before. So definitely ask for it. If you feel like you're not getting the quality of life you want, then that palliative care team needs to be on your team. And it needs to come parallel to your primary care physician. So I'll just put that little plug in for palliative care, but I think it's important because a lot of people think of it way down the line, and it's not. It's really right in the middle of that umbrella of all the continuum that we do. So, and who are those people marching through my room? One of the things that is just mind-boggling for a lot of people are all the different people you're going to see in a hospital room. So I'm not plugging my book, but it's a helpful part of the book that in part 3, you have an entire glossary of all of the cast of characters. That's the way I call them. And you can, decide who's an OT-PT, who's your occupational therapist, your physical therapist, your physician's assistant versus your AP nurse versus so on. And you get an idea of who these people are. So when they say, yeah, well, the AP's coming in today, it's not like Associated Press. It's really it's a nurse, okay? And so you have all of these people that you're going to get to know, and they're all going to be billed, and they're all going to be on your, medical chart. So get to know them in advance if you do. Kind
of like the map of your new environment.
Mm-hmm.
When your new environment is a hospital room or.
Right, exactly. And all the people that march through there. I mean, I call it the white coat syndrome. When you're sitting there in bed in a very bad outfit and there's 9 people in white coats around you, you gotta know who's there, right? I mean, who are these people with tags on? Okay, anyway. Yeah. It's a good thing to know. Okay. Oh,
and want to go to the financial and legal side, or do you want to say more about the continuum of care?
Well, no, I think the continuum of care is pretty obvious for most people, but you start with the outpatient and then you go to inpatient, and then hopefully you're, kind of working through with your doctor. And if you have quality of life issues, you want to get to palliative care sooner than later. And then after palliative care and you've kind of got situations underhand, you may find yourself towards end of life. And then it's possible you may want to consider hospice. Hospice is signed on by the doctor. It's not something you decide, the doctor decides. And then you can go to wonderful Mission Hospice and get all the care you want. And then at the end of life, you have what we call comfort care. And some people on this call know what I'm talking about when we say no one dies alone. With comfort care, often a hospital will provide someone to sit with you, as you said, because there's sometimes no family. You have people that will come alongside you and be with you until the time of death. So that's comfort care. And I think with all of that, if you understand the continuum, it's not like, everything's in nice little neat things. You might go into palliative care and then find you don't need it, and then all of a sudden go right into hospice care because of an episodic event of some kind. Yeah, and then advocating for yourself, really important. I mean, I think it's probably well known that the biggest single bill or this biggest single reason that people go into bankruptcy is medical expenses right now. So I am a big, big advocate for people to get the work done that you need and not the work you don't need. And if you're feeling like you're being pushed or someone's not giving you the right information or you don't feel that you're getting the service you want, then you have the opportunity to find an advocate in the hospital or an ombudsman, someone who will be on your side and get that work done, because it's not right, and you have patients' rights that you need to utilize. So I would encourage you that if it's not working out for you, definitely check in with a patient advocate. So,
and that's also, go ahead, sorry.
That's all right. No, go. You asked first.
No, I was just going to say two things on the. It's one of the things I hold most dear about you as a professional is your stance for patient advocacy and patient rights, and so I think calling for that from the hospital perspective, absolutely. If you're out in the community as well, though, you can call for palliative care or hospice, depending on where you are, and also in your continuum of care, but also get that kind of advocacy, that kind of vigiling at the end of life, that kind of second voice or opinion that can advocate on your behalf.
Right. So important. And really, the hospital thanks you as well, even though they may not say that, because they don't want a legal suit. They don't want you, coming back to them and saying, this didn't work and this was awful and somebody forced me to do something. They want you to have the best care as well. So why not tap into the things that they already have in place?
Yeah.
It's time to speak your voice. That's all I can say.
Right. So speaking of your voice, in an area that actually at work today, I called it a second language with someone who can speak accounting. But when you're talking about finances and law, I know a woman near her 90s years ago told me, when we were talking about all of this end of life conversations and all, she said, this is the business of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's about the care, but it's also, there's a business side of this as well. And so can you speak, especially with your expertise in this area, about the financial and legal things that people need to talk about, think about, learn more about, and do?
Yeah. Well, I call it avoiding the treasure hunt, Mary. And the reason is because so often when someone dies, they've left so many files, no one can find anything. So I originally was going to call this book The White Book, because a dear friend of mine died, and when he died, he had 5 white books. He gave one to his wife, one to his accountant, one to his pastor, and 2 to his daughters, and that was it. And it had everything in it. All the legal, financial, he told the pastor what sermon he wanted written, for the memorial. He had all of his burial wishes. Everything was in one place. It was turnkey. And I thought, well, why aren't we doing this? This was a guy who was a corporal in the Army, so he's pretty organized. But anyway, I just thought it was a great idea. And so the original idea was to write a white book, and just do the book. But then I started to kind of expand that a little bit. But this is the core of the book, really, because the last things we talk about are often money, sex, and power, right? So we're getting into the money here. And the idea is to just make up an inventory. Okay, so Vanessa, I'm going to have you bring up the inventory, the checklist of essential information and documents. This is a very basic list of things that I tell people to have available for your family. And all you're saying is, I'm going to put everything in one book, so when I die, they'll know where it is. They don't have to know what's in it, and they don't have to know the amounts, just that it's been done. So you have your financial information, your inventory of assets and liabilities, what you own and what you owe, your insurance policies, your life, your long-term care, which is important because it may pay some of those final bills, your autos and homeowners. You have additional income sources like your Social Security, your pension plans, your wages, employment accounts. Some of these are coming in every week, and there's quite a lot of money flying through the bank account. And especially with Social Security, you have to let your heirs know to stop it, because if they don't, they could be, they could be considered fraudulent. And so there are certain things that have to stop and certain things that can continue in terms of the inheritance. Then retirement plans. You may have a defined benefit plan. I'm talking a lot of lingo here, so forgive me, but that's what happens when you're a financial planner. You may have IRAs or Roth IRAs that are in an account. You may have, hopefully you're going to have your after death arrangements, what you want for burial. Do you want to be full body? Do you want to be cremated? Do you have a memorial idea of who's going to do the memorial or what kind of things you want? Are you an organ donor? That may be on your license, but not everybody's got it there, and not everybody's got an advance directive. But this is the kind of thing they should know before you die, because organ donation has to be done the first 24 hours. So that may be better placed in your advance directive, or at least on your license. And then maybe you want to be compost. I've got a section in the book about, how to make yourself an ecologically sound decedent and put yourself back in the earth, or, plant a tree with your ashes, etc. You may have outstanding debts and regular ongoing bills, things that you are paying off, like a mortgage or other things, or a debt that's to a personal person that, no one knows about, but you do, and so you have to list those. And then your tax documents. I generally ask people to save 7 years of tax documents because even though we're only required to have 4 for, going back in terms of audits, 7 is helpful, especially if you've had any kind of business or other things. They do look way back. And tax documents would also include things like the basis on your house and how much money you spent on that, because eventually if the house is sold, then you need to have a basis and all the improvements, which then help you with the capital gains. Okay, then the legal and estate information. Many people have a will, some people have trusts. Hopefully they have a durable power of attorney for finances, which then designates someone to handle the finances for them after their death, or sometimes they take over even during their lifetime. And then of course the DPOA, that hopefully they've already got in their hands. They didn't have to put it in a white book, but it's helpful to have it there in case you want to keep a copy close by. Also, I've noted the HIPAA forms and the POLST forms there. HIPAA is very important because a lot of people in your family are not next of kin. They may have a different surname. And if they call into the hospital and they want to know how you're doing, they won't get that information. Unless they're listed in the goals of care as a person that is part of your advanced directive planning, they will not have that information. Give you an example. I have an 18-year-old son, or had an 18-year-old son at a university. He went into the hospital unexpectedly. I called the hospital. I could not find out where he was. There was no HIPAA form. Because he's over 18, no one had to tell me how he was doing. So again, that might be helpful for relatives and people that are not with your last name or not listed somewhere in your legal docs. Okay, we're going to keep going. I think there's a little bit more, right? There we go. Then you may have been in the military and you need your DD-214 form so that we know that you are then qualified to be buried in a cemetery, a national cemetery. And then personal wishes and gifts. You may have special things that you want to bequeath to someone. And then pets, there's a whole universe of things that happen with pets, including trusts, I might add. That's a new thing for pets. But personal wishes and gifts, let's just say you have some jewelry or something that you really don't want to go through probate. It's not really that an issue. And you want to make sure it gets to a certain person. This would be a good place to list it. And then original documents. The things like your will, your trust, your deed of trust for your house, any of those things, they normally go in a safety deposit box. And I would suggest one at your house and not at the bank. The banks tend to be pretty tough on people after death. You have to have death certificates and a lot of other things to open them. So you may want to just keep them in a fireproof safe at home. And then, oh my gosh, one of the most important things, in a separate place, you use your IDs, passwords, pins, and codes. Can you imagine what it's like, the nightmare, when you have all these things locked up in the universe of the internet and no one knows your password? That's a problem. So you want to have a separate sheet for that and make sure it's kept in a safe place. And if you have an executor, someone that you've appointed for your will, then they will have those things separately. And that's something you can probably give them in advance without having them know all the amounts of the money that you have. I think that finishes that form. Okay, so that's a lot.
Without being after death, I can't remember my own password, so I'm not sure how anyone would deal with it afterwards.
Yeah.
Without
I just think that, it sounds so crazy, but you can imagine what it's like for a family when they don't know where to start. Yeah. And so if you have them on a separate sheet with someone that you can trust, because you won't need it until time of death, then you've opened up the universe. I mean, otherwise it's all these locked places. And fortunately, a lot of people have planners and others that, have their finances and things in a separate account, and that works well, but not everybody. Yeah. And banks are pretty tough. You've got to have all sorts of death certificates, walking them into the bank, originals, before you can open accounts and show specifically with the will that you are then the inheritor. So it's pretty complicated. Lots of fun. So I think that covers that one.
That was financial planner expertise for free for you all there.
Yeah.
And everything else. That was incredible.
Well, it's an interesting combination, I will say, to have chaplaincy and finances, but I think everyone needs to, this is really about stewardship, Mary, if we really come down to it. We are given a lot of blessings during our lifetime, but it's how we manage them. We can blow it sky high and buy Maseratis, or we can manage them well so that our heirs are thankful for our management of it. And so that's really what this is about, is stewardship. Not so much how much you have, but how you took care of it and how you made provision for the next generation.
Beautiful. And some of that provision is just how you lived. And we have people at workshops that don't have finances, don't have all of those things. In fact, I have a beautiful story of a nun that actually in one of the workshops said, what are you talking, like, it's all been given away my whole life. Yeah. And then there are other things that can be communicated in all of the documents and things that you had said. So it's,
I think that's part of the key thing. When you have special gifts, like we have a little Civil War diary that my husband has that he bought for a very small amount of money, but now it's worth a lot. And he has a specific person in the family he wants it to go to. So putting that down on paper, making it a bequeath is a lot simpler than having the family argue about it over and over after you die. So
absolutely. But it's often said this kind of planning is a gift to your family, but you only realize it when you need it. How much of a gift it is.
Well, my grandmother, in the book, I do note something. I call it Santa Claus on 4 wheels. My grandmother was going into assisted living and she didn't want to take anything with her. So she made a list of all of her stuff and passed it out to the whole family. And each one of us got three things that we wanted. And so when everybody had made their choices, and thank God there were no dupes, she loaded it all up on a truck and, had someone drive the stuff around the country, and everyone got all these gorgeous antiques. And she died with, a chair and a bed. But she died happy because she knew everyone got what they wanted.
Yeah.
during her lifetime. So it's kind of that old adage, do your giving while you're living so you're knowing where it's going. I mean, she had her wishes, just fulfilled in such a way. And she was so joyful. And we were joyful because, I have this beautiful dresser from her wonderful old antique house. And I cherish that because it reminds me of her each time. So that's another thing you can do, is some kind of advanced giving so that you're not having them argue about it later on.
That's beautiful. Advanced giving. I think actually there was one other thing in here that links to another. So there's a couple of things about, I'm going to interject the one that I'm going for first.
Okay.
So, and that's COVID.
Yeah.
We have all lived through, we're all blessed to be still on this call and be here. And you are on the front lines in the healthcare system during this time. There was a lot about, we're starting to learn what we learned through that time. And we'll continue to, but visitation, not being able to visit people, we're at a point, a window now, maybe, hopefully a door, but where people can visit more and be with each other in the hospital. During that time, it wasn't possible. What lessons, what takeaways around something like COVID or the pandemic, what words of wisdom and creative ways did you find that families and patients and staff handled that time for the best possible endings given the circumstances?
Well, it's a very important question because we never know what the future will hold. So we've learned those lessons. And I think the things that I found were so creative were people that were doing personal messages, but doing it via technology. So for instance, we had a lot of Zoom calls. I was telling you before we started that there was one family of 27 that got on a Zoom call, and they sang and they read scripture and they prayed and they did all these beautiful tributes to their mother. And the camera was right next to her head, so she could hear them, she could see them. It was like she was in the room with them, and they were in the room with her. So finding ways to be very personalized and offering tributes was just so powerful for me. And I was trying, like Vanessa, I was the tech, I was trying to get everybody's head in there and get everybody, are you next? Okay, let's get your face up there. And it was beautiful. It was 2.5 hours of these people offering really awake, it was just beautiful, all these tributes and singing and carrying on and praying and so on. So I think the use of technology has been very helpful. Another thing you can do is like Marco Polo, you make a little tape, and the tape then, is kind of preserved, and then the person can hear that tape when they want to. They just pull up that file, and they can hear this little mini video of someone, singing a song or doing a recipe or making sourdough bread or something like that. And they feel like they're in the room with them. FaceTime, of course, is very popular. I'm thinking of playlists. What's really cute is a family will get together and they'll do like a musical concert and playlist, and they'll introduce them and say, yeah, Grandma, this is the one I sang to you when I was 5 years old when I did that tap dance, whatever.
Oh,
and they have, just this lovely concert then that's been taped, and Grandma gets to listen and see all her kids. I've also had dinners. If you know what they're having at the hospital that night, like salmon or something, then everybody gathers around their table and has salmon, and you do a FaceTime and have a dinner together. That's happened. I've had, I'm trying to think of the other things. Gifts. It's really important that you check in with a nurse or people. What is it they're missing in the room? Is there something that I can offer them that would kind of brighten their room? Because, rooms tend to be a little dull, and if they're in ICU, there's not a lot of room for anything because there's so much equipment around there. But it might be a picture. It might be, something that they cherish, or I've seen families, hang, postcards, all of these family pictures just in one spot, and it's just the right spot because that's where their head is, positioned, and they can see all these things. It's kind of like having the mobile for a little baby. You've got this picture that they see, and it really thrills them. It's lovely. Let's see, other things. Oh, a comedy hour. I've had people do comedy hours where they tell their worst jokes and then tape it. Yeah, I mean, these are crazy things, but again, they're personal and they're just fun things. One of the things that I think in hospice, you know about this, Mary, there's a thing that we call the last sprint, where people, have been kind of in semi-coma and not doing so well, and all of a sudden they just come to life and they want this party. And so, if you can't do it with COVID, then you put the party on FaceTime and you somehow stage a party for them so they can see, and then, maybe give them blowers and a hat or something so they can really participate. But it's amazing how that last spurt of energy happens. And so the family needs to be ready for that. And so I encourage kind of thinking about a party or singing or something. When a lady was dying I think I have this in the book, when a lady was dying on one of the floors, I decided to do a musical comedy hour. And so I did every single musical I knew with her daughters. And we actually staged musical comedy stuff for her because she was in musical comedy and she was a Shakespearean actress. And so it was personalized for her because these were all shows she'd been in. Once I knew the playlist, then we were just singing for an hour, and the nurses came in and started singing, and the doctors came in and started singing. It was insane, but it was so much fun because she was there, she was present, and she died, I think, 3 days later. But can you imagine? The last thing to go is hearing. So if you give them the gift of music or singing or readings, poems, tributes, anything that they can listen to, it's really a valuable gift. And all of that can be done over, technology. So even with COVID, you can have an amazing time in sending them off, as we say.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love how you're also busting the myth that serious illness has to be serious. Not that it isn't, but also, and hospice and end of life. I mean, I've heard more laughter in rooms at the end of life, very near the end of life, more joy, more expression than sometimes people have experienced, certainly in the last month. So it's wonderful to laugh with you along with this. And I think everyone would like your recording of those songs.
It was a hoot. I have to say, I don't think I've sung that much in years, but I tend to be the singing chaplain anyway, and so we sing a lot of hymns and songs that people really like to hear. But that musical comedy hour, that was a hit, and the nurses still talk about it. But it was just it was purposeful because that was her life. Her life was musicals and Shakespeare, and I thought, well, I'm not reciting Shakespeare. No way. We'll do the musical part. And when the daughters got involved, it was magical. It was just incredible. So to me, that's a spirit lifting. Yeah. That's saying to that person, you have meaning and purpose. We want to recognize the part of your life that is so special, and we're going to send you out with a real, whiz bang holiday musical, whatever, extravaganza. And so it was a great moment.
Beautiful. And also how much for those that don't work inside the healthcare system or don't have a lot of experience with it, how much it lifts and engages the spirits and souls of the staff.
Absolutely.
They are humans and they're doing difficult jobs. And when you can do something and engage people in something personal, it lifts the energy for everybody. And
it does.
And it's incredible when you have someone like you leading the way with the staff in the hospital that you're in.
It was amazing because the nurses actually got into it. One of them came in and sang with us. So I thought, in a way, we're often our patients are the staff as well, especially during COVID. It's just so many of them were really drained, and so just to take that time to be with them was very important. And that goes too. I mean, that really follows to the next thing, Mary, is that we need to recognize the families. It's not just the patient, but recognize the families and the work that they do, and how blessed we are to have those family members to support them, because they're putting in time that no one could pay for. No one could pay for that time. And so I always try to recognize and affirm the caregiver that's in the room, because I know how hard that work is, especially when they're watching their loved one die.
Yeah.
It's really hard work.
And speaking of when a loved one dies, what are some of the things people need to know about when someone dies in the hospital or in hospice? And I'm afraid I'm going to forget this, so I want to interject just because another addition to that question from the earlier conversation. How do you involve children, or what are your thoughts about when children are part of the family?
Yeah,
so it's multi-leveled, but
multi-levels. We'll get to kids probably second there. I want to kind of start with what happens in the hospital. When a person dies, a very special thing happens in our hospital. They have what they call the pause. And the doctors and nurses gather in the room and they have a moment just to grant dignity and integrity to that person, to say this was a life that mattered. And so they have a moment where they just go silent. Sometimes people will say a few things, but most of the time it's just to say, we affirm your life, we thank you for the life you've lived, and we've been thankful to be part of your care team. So I think that's one of the most important things. It gives them closure. It also, if the family is there, it gives them a sense that this matters. These people matter to them. With that comes the next part, which is whether or not the person has come in as an emergency. Often that then results in the coroner's case. So I just want to bring this up at top, because very few people become coroner's cases, less than 10%. The people that have come through the ED. But if it is, then things are very different for that person. They will be, the jurisdiction will be, the county will take over that body and they will take them to the ME's department at the county's offices, and they will receive an autopsy. It's guaranteed. So that's just one thing we need to know in the event that this was a violent accident or an unknown disease or something else that was difficult to examine or analyze. So that's one possibility, but the majority, 90% probably, of everyone that comes to the hospital will probably be then prepared. They usually wash the body and they will take out the tubes. If it's not a coroner's case, they will take out all the extraneous IVs and so on, and wash the body and wrap it into what we call a plastic sack, and the body will be taken down to the morgue, or the cold room, as it's referred to, until the family makes a decision as to where they would like the remains to go. So usually family has about 2 to 3 days to make that decision. And hopefully the chaplain's there to give them a list of places where they might consider, or they may have already done the work and they can sign off then and say, this is where we wish to have the body released. In hospice, I know, Mary, you could probably tell this much better than I could, but thank goodness for hospice, because it does not require a medical examiner. It means that they have taken jurisdiction over the deceased, and they've made a decision with the family as to where the body will go next. So that's a blessing, and that's one. If no other reason that you need to consider hospice, that's one of them, because otherwise, if the body dies at home without hospice or a jurisdiction, they will automatically be a coroner's case. So that's something to consider in terms of how you see yourself dying at home with or without hospice. Yeah, right. So then the person's in the cold room, and at that point, the family makes the decision. In the event that they wish to have an autopsy, then an autopsy will be performed generally within the first week. If it's an organ donation, then the organ donation company will come and do what we call a recovery of the organs. Sometimes they're in the hospital because they do an immediate transplant. Praise God, that's wonderful. Or they will do it at their facility and then bring the body back, and then the body will remain there until they go to the funeral home or wherever you designated. So those are some of the things to remember in terms of what happens to a body after they die. It's generally a very honoring thing. The nurses do such a beautiful job of preparing everyone for the cold room and then getting ready for the funeral process. So you will have generally a list of places to go, but it's always good to make that decision early on, which would then you tell your heirs that's what you want. Some people prepay. I don't recommend that necessarily, because prepay, if you die in one state and it's not the state where your funeral plans are honored, there may be some problem with reciprocity. So pre-planning is always great. Prepaying is up to you. And it's just something to consider. Other things to say, yes. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
As you're thinking about that, if there were others, so the majority of that was about dying in the hospital.
Right.
And just as you mentioned, for folks that would choose to die at home, would have the option with earlier conversations to stop more invasive treatment, and or their illness and trajectory is likely within 6 months that the person would die. The option of hospice is there, and then you actually are cared for in your home with the teams, and any of that the funeral home that you choose will come in and
Right.
remove the body from the home. So any final rituals or practices happen there around the bedside at the home.
Right, exactly. And for so many religions, that's such a blessing because in the Buddhist religion, some people probably are aware that they want complete silence. They don't want anything, no machines, anything. They want the spirit to pass. And they also don't want any kind of openings to the body and so on. So it's a lovely thing to be able to be at home and have that available. Whereas with the hospital, there's a lot of other things going on that makes it a little harder.
Yeah,
so
and there can be tremendous care in both places. It's just
right.
what, and,
Yeah,
and I'm so glad that you mentioned the faith-based conversation again, because earlier when you raised it, I was thinking oftentimes families or friends are of different traditions. And so honoring what that person's is, even if it's not a family member or if it is part of that uniqueness that can be offered. And I know that's, you stand for that, but.
Yeah, well, and also in many religions, three major religions that we work with, the Muslims and the Orthodox Jewish, and also many Hindus, they insist on a 24-hour burial. So let me just say that's often very difficult to do on a weekend or a holiday because it requires a death certificate in order to bury someone. So it means we have to wake up people in Sacramento and in Santa Clara and get the death certificate done before they can bury that person. So be gentle and kind with the hospital. We're doing our best to get those things done, but it isn't always possible. And so we work very closely with the religious orders and faith groups to let them know we're doing all we can to get that done. But it's important. So that another reason why you might want to die at home, because those kinds of rituals and things can be done there. Yeah, and then you mentioned children, Mary. I wasn't forgetting about it. Children are such a precious gift to us, and death is hard because it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, there's kind of the logic of they're here and then they're not here. And what does that mean? One thing I encourage people not to say is he's just sleeping. Because when you say he's just sleeping, then that child will probably not sleep for the next 2 weeks. They assume that sleeping means they die. So you want to somehow remove all of those things that have to do with things that really aren't true. We have to say his body is dead. It didn't work anymore. The things that we thought were going to work and keep him alive didn't work. And so now he's dead. You have to use the words. And it can be as simple as that, rather than just trying to say things that are a little too euphemistic and not very helpful, because it can often be misinterpreted by a child. The other thing that with child and grief, use language that's at their level. You know, you don't tell them about myocardial infarcts. You say his heart stopped and it doesn't work anymore, and mommy and daddy are really sad about that, and it means that he won't be with us. He's dead right now and we're going to bury him, you know, or something simple that doesn't, you know, give this flowery language that they won't understand or care about. Answer the question that's been asked and make it as simple as possible at their level is the best thing I can tell you. And don't be afraid to ask for help later on in terms of counseling, because it is very confusing for them. They thought, well, gosh, you know, maybe I'm next or I'm going to die. Why was it them and not me? Or you'll see them do amazing things. I'm speaking to counselors now, I'm sure, but what often children do is that they overcompensate. They start making their bed. They start being the perfect child when they were a hellion or whatever. And the idea is that they think if they do all of those things, then that person will come back. And so, again, simple language. Ask the question, answer the question that's been asked, and be very clear that no, grandpa will not be coming back. We're going to say goodbye to him and we're going to bury him. And then we'll remember him. So let's talk about the things we remember about him and let them kind of then process some of those things. So those are some things that are helpful. I mean, that's a whole class in itself.
It is. And I know I threw that in on the side, but with your
No,
experience.
it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And we have so many children that are grieving right now with COVID and all the other things. So we need to address that. It's very important.
Yeah, no, thank you. So you were talking about things to remember people by. What are your experiences or wisdom of what people planned for celebrations of life, memorials? I mean, funerals in the olden days were pretty
Grim.
Dry, solid, solemn. You know,
Yeah.
they're a lot different now.
Yeah, they are. They are. Well, and I like the way the terminology has changed, Mary. It used to be, we're going to the funeral. Now we're going to a celebration of life.
Yes.
And I just appreciate that so much more, because it really is a celebration of a life. Unless the person was just awful, you don't want to celebrate them. You know, really, it's all the things that you remember about them, their legacy. So, Vanessa, I'm going to have you bring up the body disposition and memorial planning, if we would. One of the things that I encourage people to do is to plan ahead. You know, we have I think we have the thing that just after that. Yeah. Let's see what you got. Okay, it's coming up. I know it is. Yep, there we go. All right, so in advance, if you're able to get some of this done with your mother or father, or this is for you, you can, you know, let them know what you want, you know, in terms of body disposition, where you're going to go, who's the emergency contact, and all of that. Additional information for the death certificate is important, because even though you die at a hospital, they're going to ask a whole lot more questions at the funeral home, because those are the things that will finish the death certificate. We started with medical information, and the funeral home or cremation society finishes it. So there's often a lot of information that if you get it done in advance, your kids aren't going for the treasure hunt through your stuff. So military records, date of birth, place of birth, so on. If there's a Medicare number, all of that helpful. And then location of funds, where you're going to pay for this, because it can get very pricey. You know, there are places that are available for $600 to do cremation, and there's Forest Lawn for $25,000. You know, so someone's going to have to pay. Also, you might well let them know about the organ donor. Let me say one other thing. I didn't get to cover this, Mary, about whole body. Whole body is very different donation than from organ donation, because it normally requires a special form that's filled out in advance and given to the institution, the medical institution, or the research group that you're working with. So typically you want to have that separate and give it to your executor, someone that is really in charge of you. So something to think about, because normally you can't fill it out after you die. So you need to do it in advance, and it's something that gets distributed to the people that are interested. And then you tell them where you know, mortuary, crematorium, location, any body preparation, and so on. If there's a casket, you want to go out in a, you know, a rosewood casket versus pine, whatever. If you want to be scattered, you know, there might be an airline or group that you have, or a pilot that you know that can do the scattering, and so on. You also have to make, you know, permission with the county for scattering cremains. Not always, but most people should do that. It's kind of the legal thing to do. Okay, and we'll just keep going down. And then interment plots and so on. If you've already done your pre-planning, you can list all of this here, your military information, national burial site, all of that's there. And then this is the ceremony. So you've been asking us, you know, what is it you want to have at the celebration? Well, again, a lot of kids may not be following their parents' religious affiliation. So it's important that if you want to have a certain kind of service, that you state that in this preference. And is a religious service desired? What denomination, if not listed? Military service, you know, do the flag ceremony. Is there someone that you'd like to be the officiant? Do you want to wear specific clothing? How would the family be seated? I mean, this is really drilling down. But you'd be amazed at how much this helps the family in terms of how they're going to plan it. I'm currently planning a memorial for a family in Palo Alto, and it is so extensive. It's in a backyard. It's not in a church. It's involving close to 15 people in the service. It's songs. It's, you know, just all sorts of stuff, and it takes time to really plan a good one. Memorial services, sermon message, special music. Like I said, Ollie, he even knew the sermon he wanted, so you can put that down if you want. Is there hymns or prayers or singing or scriptures or poems? Do you have friends you want to speak? You know, some people do really well and some not so well, so you want to list who you think would be good. Processional music, flowers, I mean, it's all in there. So the one thing that I want to say is be creative. You know, in terms of your preferences, it's fun to have memorabilia, it's fun to have slides, good pictures, funny pictures. You may have a recording of yourself singing a song. It may be things that you want to have at the reception, like a special cookie or a special recipe. One thing that I just thought was so cool, somebody liked Mystic Mint cookies. And so they put those out there and they told them where they could get them because it was their favorite cookie. Or it might be something where they have a dessert that is just their favorite. And so they have the dessert at the reception and they have a recipe. So now you can make it yourself. I mean, things like that, just to have fun and make it personal. And the reception and so on. Don't assume that every church or organization does a reception. You may have to plan that yourself. But I've listed all the things that can happen. Again, these are picky things. But if you get it all done, then your family's not guessing. And I love this last thing overall. In this ceremony program, I want people to know the following. This is what I want them to know about me. That I was, kind, generous, crazy, musical, whatever. Because that's the kind of thing that the officiant or the pat about you. So you get to write about yourself.
Yeah, there was just a moment where there was a little glitch in the video, Libby, but you're back.
I think there's more. There's no more. Is that it? Okay, I'm back. Woo! Right. All right, and then the obituary and the eulogy. So someone's going to be giving your life story, and you can kind of combine the two with the obituary and the eulogy because it's really your history. And so you put all this together. This is the thing you give to your executor, and they give it to the paper, and they can make a story out of it, and the person that's doing the eulogy can do the same. So this is just a little template for you to help out. Thank you, Vanessa. You're amazing.
Thank you, Vanessa. And thank you, Libby. That list was incredible. And as overwhelming as it can seem to some, I often say that you can get a PhD in end of life alone because it's a whole spectrum of information that many people aren't exposed to until we need it. Right. But a couple of years back, a dear friend of Mission Hospices actually died in the area. And she was known to be pretty much a control freak in her life. Those that knew her, a control person. She actually had laid out everything she wanted for the seating, everything that you've just gone through. Had I not experienced that, I might have thought your list was slightly over the top. I'm just going to be honest. It was absolutely not over the top. People joked about that she had everything written down, but her daughters and everyone pulling that together after the shock of her death, which death is always a shock, even when it's known it's coming. You're always in that emotional state. It went without a hitch, and we all actually appreciated that was part of who she was, and it actually added to the ceremony. So I couldn't support more all of the details that you had there. It really made a tremendous difference. Well, and especially for her daughters, they were able to be present with the love that was being shared rather than tearing their hair out about what should be done.
Yeah, because, unless you put it down, they're going to have to guess. I mean, a lot of you got these, what I call the bifurcated family, where someone was very religious and they've been a part of a church and they, been so involved, and their kids haven't gone to church. And so when you say, what hymns would you like? The kids go, what? So if you have all of that down and you've got your preferences, you're going to have the ceremony you want. I mean, you're in heaven looking down and it's good, okay? Because the kids wouldn't know what those hymns are. So why not get that on paper and then you have the service you want? Yeah. I mean, I actually had somebody say, hey, how about Love Me Do? The Beatles are cool. I said, I don't think that's going to work. So I had to disappoint him. But, they were convinced that, having Beatles and the Beach Boys would be a great service. And I said, it might, but your mom really wanted this. So we're going to,
I'm going to put it in their list.
Yeah, your playlist, okay? Yeah. All right. No, it doesn't matter. Bless them. It's okay.
Wonderful. Well, I am in awe that we actually, there's one more question, believe it or not. I'm thinking we've gone through the planning to the ending. There is, this just speaks to how comprehensive this is in your book. But the last question that we had was about helpful ways to manage.
I know we probably have one more question, but just a quick time check. In my duties is that we do have about 10 minutes, and I see some people who raise their hand like they might have some questions.
Oh, okay. You know what? I think we'd be okay to skip the grief because it's in the book. If they get the book, it's 10, what I call 10 things, general principles on grief and loss. It's pretty easy stuff. We covered some of it with kids.
Okay.
And, you know, I think the one thing I would say, no timeline. Don't try to do a timeline. Don't tell people that they're done. And then know who your friends are. Those are the top two that I would give. And then we can go on to the other 8. But I think that's where I'd start. No timeline, guys. Don't tell them it's 6 months. You're done. Come on, get over it. You know, whew. You will have me coming after you if you say that.
Wonderful. Now I know and thank you for truncating that a bit so we can move to the group questions. And thank you, Vanessa, for the time check. So do we want to take questions in the chat or?
Up to you, whatever works for you.
With raised hands, we can take questions verbally if you don't mind keeping your question fairly brief if we have a number of questions so everyone can get their questions in. And Vanessa, I don't know if you've been able to see whose hands have been going up first.
I see Marjorie waving her fingers to start.
Yes, Marjorie.
Okay, well, this was so just excellent. And I need to do all this, but I'd like to know the name of the book and how to obtain it.
Okay, well.
That was my last parting statement. We will put the link to how you can purchase the book on the summary that comes out after this session.
Oh,
but you can get a copy from bullpub.com. Is that right, Libby?
Yep, that's the one.
LLPUB.com. You can get free shipping on up to 2 copies, and you can get it in digital or paperback. And the handouts, there's a question about the slides. So the slides were actually
you get a book.
Printed handouts that are included in the book. And Libby has been generous enough to allow us to send those to you as part of the follow-up of this presentation. So you will get the handouts in the follow-up email that will also include the survey of how wonderful this was for you all tonight. But also you'll get those handouts as well. And yes, Rosa, we can put the link to bullpub.com in the chat for you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marjorie.
Thank you, Marjorie.
Yeah.
I'll even sign it for you.
Okay. That was wonderful, Libby. I'm so impressed.
Oh, thanks, Marjorie. It's so good to see you. Okay, looks like we've got some more questions.
Other questions?
I see lots of great comments, people saying that this was fabulous. But feel free if there are some additional questions to type them in. It looks like Charlie is also waving his hand that he has a question. Charlie, feel free to unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Libby. Really appreciate it. You know, you taught me everything that I know about hospice and advanced medical directives. Seriously, yeah, I just want to note that I went back to Boston for 3 weeks, and I brought a copy of the advanced directive with me. My father's 91 years old, still Sprite, walks 3 miles a day. He's got a girlfriend, the whole 9 yards. But I really wanted to make a point, you know, that this is good for the family, because I got 5 brothers, you know.
Yep.
And he was able to go in his closet where he keeps his records, and he brought out one. He already filled one out, and I was so, you know, it's like, oh, thank you. You know, it just made my day, you know.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
and I gave some to my in-laws too, you know, so it's really.
You're handing them out, Charlie. You were making, okay. That's great.
Yeah, I wish I could get back there. Not until September, I guess.
Yeah. Well, good for you. You're one of our greatest advocates, Charlie. Thank you. For those of you that don't know, Charlie worked at Stanford as a volunteer and really was the champion AD signer. He got everybody's AD signed more than anybody I know. So thank you, Charlie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. On behalf of our community, thank you, Charlie.
Yes.
And also your experience. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard that parents have done this but they haven't told their kids, their adult kids. And so the fact that you didn't know your dad had done it, and the relief that you just shared with all of us, you know, just maybe they've done it, but if they haven't told you, that's beautiful that you had that experience together.
See, and you modeled it well too, Charlie, because you brought up the subject, and then he could follow up and let you know the good news. So good for you.
And I was able to put the link in for the book in the chat, which I know we'll send out in an email, but just in case you can't wait and you have to stay up all night reading it tonight, you'll be able to click on it. And it looks like we don't have any additional questions right now in the chat, but I'm sure we're happy to give people some time to think of any additional questions if they want to ask that, or to feel free to unmute yourself and give us a question verbally too.
Yeah.
Oh, one question. Is there people that actually can help you with all this stuff? It's a lot. It's a lot, right?
It is a lot. It is a lot.
It's like, you know, I don't want to die now because it's too much work. No, seriously, you know.
Well, I'll tell you, Charlie, you know, I tell people in the book, do it at your level and your timing, because if you take, say, one thing a week, you know, you get your inventory done, and then another week you get your burial and stuff done, you know, it'll be maybe a month or two when you got it all done. Don't try to do it all at once. It'll drive you crazy. But I think you've got all the templates in the back. You can fill those out. And you may have some, you know, you may take you a little while to get all of your passcodes and your other stuff ready. But really, most people can get it done in 1 or 2 months.
Okay.
You know, and then once you do that, have a party, go out, celebrate, let your kids know, whatever, your family know, because you've done something beautiful for them. You know, it's really a celebration. You've given them a legacy, and legacy just simply means passing a blessing on to somebody else. In this case, you've given them the gift of no time to find other things. You know, it took us 18 months to get my parents straightened out. And that was a lot of time that was not well spent. You know, we did some fun things like, you know, dress up in their costumes and dance, you know, that kind of thing, you know, in their clothes and stuff. It was kind of fun. But it still takes a lot out of you. So if you do it now, you saved your family all that time. So just do it a bite at a time. Just like the elephant, one bite at a time.
The people are often so amazed once they finish their advanced directives that they feel a relief they didn't think they would feel. To have all of this done would just free up so much energy.
It'd be huge. It'd be huge. And I remember when I got my white book done, I, of course, then informed our sons. I go, oh, Mom, you told us this before. You know, it's like, but I don't want them to forget. You know, if we go off to some place that, you know, we're not easily found, like in Europe or something, they're going to know where to go. You know, they're going to have that all done. So for me, it just saves a lot of effort.
Yeah. Well, this has been, if there are no more questions, Vanessa, are we?
It looks like we are all caught up on questions at the moment.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, I am just on behalf of everyone. Yes. Raised hands, claps, applause, book sales, hugs, hugs across the screen. Just tremendous gratitude, not only for, I'm sure what was the very personally challenging life experience that inspired this, to your tremendous professional background, the use a Yiddish term, the chutzpah, to get a book done, and to actually then be able to share all of this wisdom in one place with all of us. May the ripples just continue of the gift of saved time that you have offered so many. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Libby.
Thank you. It's been an honor, Mary. I just can't tell you how much it meant. When I heard it was possible, my heart just leapt. So I'm very thankful.
Well, we are very thankful, and for all of you to share more of your thanks. We will be sending a follow-up email, probably through Eventbrite, as you had registered and got your confirmation. It will have a survey, and we will certainly share any of your personal comments. If you'd like, we can share them with Libby afterwards as well. It will have the links to her book, to the Mission Hospice education around advanced care planning that had the links that Libby mentioned as well, one of the resources for you. And also our upcoming events guide, so that you will see other authors and speakers and events that we have coming up in the coming months. So this is something we do on a regular basis. For those of you that are regulars, thank you for joining us. For those of you that are new, thank you for joining us. For those of you that are just here for Libby, thank you for being here for Libby. And we just, you're all part of our community, so thank you so very much. And I hope you have a lovely evening knowing the difference you can make by doing all of this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks.
Good night.
Night.